Welcome back. You are seeing me really enjoying myself in Andalusia in Spain, riding some amazing roads in some equally amazing countryside as I record a new series of features about great biking roads for our YouTube channel. One of the first lovely roads that I stumbled upon led me to a very pleasant surprise, nestled in a valley next to an unassuming restaurant that would appeal to any South African because it is dedicated to the joy of eating vast quantities of meat cooked over an open fire. And this is the little gem at the end of what is a fantastic ride, I have to say. No better way to finish it than at this little museum of historical vehicles, which is actually primarily motorbikes. And there's some little gems in the gem of a museum. It's only one big room, it's obviously a private collection, but there's quite a, how would you describe it, eclectic mix of stuff in there, and I whiled away nearly 2 hours quite happily just looking at all the weird odds and sods that are in there, from Ducatis and Moto Guzzi's to old French marks and BMWs and an early Indian and Nortons and a Morgan car and an early Renault car. Yeah, there's some really good stuff. This collection is obviously skewed towards Spanish motorcycles, and unless you're something of a history buff, you may not realise quite how strong the industry was in Spain in years gone by. But I'm sure names like Bultaco, Derby, Silco, Montesa and Ossa will ring a few bells. I'm going to ignore the vast majority of the wonderful machines on display here. Maybe I'll find an excuse to show some of them in the future, but in the meantime, I'm selfishly just going to blitz through a few of the exhibits that really appeal to me. To begin with, here's a bike that was always a top trumps card winner from my childhood and is one of the very first bikes that I ever truly lusted after. The first ever six-cylinder bike to go into production, the Benelli Sei, was made between 1973 and 1989, first as a 750 and then from 1979 as a 900, but this is one of the original 750s. If that motor looks familiar to some of you, that's because it was basically a Honda CB500 engine with 2 extra cylinders. Here's another bike from the same sort of era that stood out because I'd never seen one before. It's a Jap Auto 1000 VX and is essentially a heavily modified Honda CB750 engine that was initially conceived as an endurance racer. Jap Auto was the French importer of Honda and had enjoyed the success and, I presume, the money that Honda's dominant, innovative, game-changing CB750 had brought the company, and so in an attempt to stay ahead of the deluge of Japanese models that soon follow, bikes like Kawasaki Z1, they produced leery versions of the 750. This 969cc race replica is from 1974, is very rare outside France and is still in working order. Turning the clock back a bit further to the post-Second World War period of the late 1940s and early 1950s, I noticed this Swiss motorcycle. It's a Condor, and the marque was in existence until 1978, largely concentrating on making stuff for the Swiss military. That's how this 577cc 20 horsepower air-cooled boxer engine shaft-driven A580 came into existence. The Swiss wanted something as reliable as the bikes that had served the Germans so well during the war, and this is what they got. It had 8 gears, double the amount of the equivalent BMW, though really it was still a 4-speed transmission but with high and low ranges. From the same time period, but very different, this delightful Spanish-built motorised bicycle caught my eye. It would make the perfect machine for a gentle ride down to the pub of a Sunday afternoon. This Silco 72 was made in 1950 by a mechanic named Silvestre and his business partner Coral, hence the Silco name. Fitted with a 72cc 4-stroke engine with no gearbox and less than 60 ever being made, it's probably worth a pretty penny these days. Moving even further back in time, we have this Ravat BS4 that was produced by the French company in 1922. It's a 175cc 2 horsepower 2-stroke made by Ravat themselves, rather than an engine being bought in from another manufacturer. And it's a fairly typical example of the sort of bike the average earning Joe, like myself, might have been riding 100 years ago. And finally, I think I'll leave you with this. It's a BMW. It's not exactly rare because over 18,000 military R75 motorcycle and sidecar combinations were produced between 1941 and 1944, though most were obviously destroyed on active duty. This one had been destined to serve with the Afrika Korps in North Africa under the infamous Rommel, but ended up as one of 300 used by the Spanish Army. I like that it is displayed with the relevant weaponry of the time, including a couple of German hand grenades known by the Allies as potato mashers, and this rather evil contraption that is a flamethrower. Thinking about it, and the sort of people I know, this might actually be the better choice for a quiet Sunday ride to the pub.